Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's TIBCO Cloud Integration bi-weekly webinar. My name is Jordan Watts and I'm an Integration Solutions Consultant. Today what we'll be doing is first going through a quick slide presentation to show what TIBCO Cloud Integration is and where it fits in the TIBCO software spectrum. After that we will jump into a quick demo, and from there on after what we will do is show a few of the resources that are available to you if you want to take a chance to try out the product yourself or learn a little bit more about it. The main goal of TIBCO is to be able to provide what we call a connected intelligence, and essentially the goal of connected intelligence is to be able to take all your data from all of your different systems and to be able to bring that information together, whether it's APIs, on-premise solutions, or your SaaS applications. From there, what we do is take that data, we organize it, and are able to act on that data so you can analyze it and deliver those results in order to get actionable intelligence. And so this connected intelligence falls into two categories. That first portion, being able to interconnect everything, which is your data and systems of your traditional systems, or being able to utilize the APIs within your modern SaaS applications. This is the key where TCI fits into this TIBCO puzzle, being able to provide an API-led method of integrating your cloud applications with a cloud integration system. Lastly is the ability to provide people and processes an automated way of completing these tasks. On the other side is once you've taken this information and brought it together in these processes, you're able to provide analytics to these services that you have. Whether you would like to visualize a data discovery, these analytics on your own, to be able to automate the process of these analytics and applying models that you've determined based on your data discovery. And lastly, the ability to take these analytics and embed them either in your own application or through our platforms, so that way it can be delivered in any format and in any context. The important things you need to know about TIBCO Cloud Integration is that we are an integration platform as a service, which I'll refer to as iPaaS for the rest of the presentation. And the three main things we're able to provide is, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to connect to those cloud or SaaS applications in which it's typically tricky to get data from because they don't have databases on-premise. And the only way to get access to that information is via APIs. TIBCO Cloud Integration also provides an API modeling workflow, which allows you to easily drag and drop and model APIs and actually test them against a live endpoint before you even launch these services. And lastly, the greatest thing about the cloud is that it's in the cloud, and that you're able to run these services and your integration apps all on the cloud without having to worry about IT or the infrastructure to back your integration needs. If you have cloud and SaaS applications, why should your integration have to be on-premise? I always like to point out that when it comes to TIBCO Cloud Integration, it's only a part of the entire TIBCO Cloud platform. We now have an entire cloud toolkit that's able to integrate many of our products that have been moved to this cloud service. We already talked about TIBCO Cloud Integration, the iPaaS tool, being able to interconnect everything and acting as the central glue to this cloud ecosystem. We also have other products such as TIBCO Live Apps, which allows you to utilize a low-code app development environment, which will allow you to easily create business processes and apps customized to your specific need. We also have TIBCO Spotfire in the cloud, our analytics platform, and we also have now had TIBCO Cloud Messaging, which is our messaging product that has been brought into the cloud. So what I'm doing now is we're going to demonstrate TIBCO Cloud Integration in action. And so what I'm going to do is take two different SaaS applications, in this particular case, Salesforce and Marketo, and integrate the information being passed in between them. For this particular use case, In the world of marketing, when a lead is created or a contact within Salesforce, we want to be able to take that information and pass that lead to our marketing platform, such as Marketo, in order to automate the process of taking these leads and targeting them in a certain marketing campaign. So to start things off, what I'm going to do is log into my TIBCO Cloud integration page. As you can see, I have many tabs up here, such as the apps, which lists all my apps that I have available, all the API specs that are attached to it. So if I wanted to model any APIs, I would do it there. I'm also able to create live connections within the TIBCO Cloud integration platform, and there's many other things to help you extend or utilize the tool. The first thing we're going to do is jump into the connection tab. And as you can see, I have many different types of connections already created. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create a brand new connection to Salesforce. And as we can see, with all these different connections we have available, I can now log in and click my Salesforce connector. I'm going to give it a name. And we're just going to log in. And so what's going to happen is it's going to look for your username. I'll select that username and just give it permission to have access to the data. Once I allow that, it's going to create that brand new connection in just a second that I'll now be able to use to pull contact data from Salesforce. Going back to our Apps tab, now what we're going to do is create a brand new application from scratch. I'm going to go right over here, click the Create button, and choose the sandbox for it to be put in. I'll just put it in my demo sandbox and give the app a brand new name. Hit Create. And the first thing you're going to notice is that you're going to see multiple types of applications available. First of all, there's the ability to push an integration app, which can be done from our Business Studio desktop version. This allows you not only to build applications on the desktop, but to also convert your current BusinessWorks applications over and deploy them to the cloud. I could push a Node.js app if I have any built, and those could be ran within TIBCO Cloud integration. I could also create a mock application to test against an actual live endpoint. And lastly, I can not only upload, but I can build an application within TIBCO Cloud integration using the Flogo project. I'm going to go ahead and click this one to get started. Now the first thing you're going to see up here is the menu for that application. You can see it's currently not running. And we have different things, whereas we can build the flows, we can see the metrics of the application running, and some of the log and environmental controls related to that particular application. What I'm going to go ahead and do is build a flow. Now a flow is essentially just a flow of information from one point to another, or multiple points in between it. We have the ability to create multiple flows within an application. So I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new flow. We'll call it first flow. And we can see there's three different ways to run this information. The first one is on timer, so if you wanted this data to update on a batch process every day, every hour, every minute, that would be the way to do it here. The second one is a connection, which is the one we're going to choose, which is a live connection. So when that data is updated within Salesforce, you have the ability to update that information in that Marketo application in real time. Lastly, you have the ability to create a REST trigger. So every time an API call is made, that will trigger this particular flow. We'll click connection and we'll choose that webinar connection that we chose earlier. It's going to ask now what object is it we want to access. And since we're going to use contact, we're going to go ahead. Let's try that again. And choose that contact object. I'll click create. And we now have that brand new flow created. All I have to do is click on the flow and start editing it right away. And we can see that there's an error because we haven't filled out the entire object. The first thing it's going to ask for is a query of what data is it that you want to pull. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste a quick statement in there that says we're going to take the ID, the first name, an email, and a zip code from that contact object. After that, we're done with building our first activity within the app, and you can see that live connection there. As you can see, it's very easy to build new activities. I have many different types of apps I can be connected to and worked with. For this particular one, all we're going to need is a general activity. First thing we're going to do is enter a log message, and this is merely for the point to prove that we've actually pulled data from Salesforce, so it's a self-check for our developers. I'll go into clicking the Input tab, and you can see a message that needs to be created. So all I'm going to say here is type a combination of strings using concat, and you can notice the autofill that's happening here. And we're just going to say a message has arrived for the second one. I want to replace that with an actual object. So we're going to use the ID to replace that information. And the trigger data is merely the data that's being brought in from Salesforce. Now that we've created that message, it's time to actually create that live connection to Marketo. I'm going to go ahead and click on a new activity, this time going down to the Marketo tab. We're going to upload data in the Marketo, so we're going to use the upsert command. I'm going to go ahead and click my connection, choose an object, which is leads, and choose an action associated with that, which will be adding those leads. Now, all I need to do is click on the Input tab to choose how that data is being mapped, which is very easy to do. All I need to do is go into that input array, do a quick array statement just in case we have multiple expected, saying for each of those inputs that we pass through, we're going to map the email from that trigger data. So I'll click email. I'll click first name. Oops, wrong search button. And we'll do the postal code as well. So once we've mapped all that information, you can see here that the data shows that we now have it mapped. I'm going to exit it out, and before we push our application live, all I need to do is do another log message to confirm that we actually got data from Marketo. I'm going to type in another string. Saying Marketo has been upserted. And then the ID associated with it. Good. Now that we've completed our first flow, we now have the ability to take that information and push it. I'm now going to push this app to our live instance. So now that this app's going to be running, we're going to have the ability to see it completely working once I zoom in to our demo sandbox. And as this loads, I'll kind of explain what we're going to do with our actual test. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to log into Marketo here, and from that point all I need to do is go to our lead database. And so once I navigate to that lead database, I'm going to be able to see a lead pop up here in real time once I add it as a contact within Salesforce. And so when I switch back over here, the first thing we're going to do is, once this is running, is go into that Salesforce extension, create the contact, and see it in real time updated in Marketo. After that, what I'm going to do is switch back over to TCI and show you some of the more advanced things you can do in a flow. And then we'll switch to questions. So now that we have that contact information ready, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new contact. And so now that we've filled in that zip code, that email, and the name, all I need to do is save that contact. And what's going to happen is when I switch over to that lead database, it's now going to update. All I need to do is refresh the page and filter my leads by the most updated. And now we are able to see that lead. So with that, we have our TCI person at the email of tci@tibco.com. With that, we're successfully able to show how we could take a contact from Salesforce and upload it to Marketo instantly. So now what I'm going to do is dive back into this application and show a few extra things we can do with flows. The first thing I want to point out is we have an error handler flow. So when errors or issues happen, you could create a flow just like you did with a particular issue to handle that information and to proceed without causing this integration flow to break. The second thing I want to point out is that it's not just a one-to-one relationship. Flows can get a little more complex if needed. You can enter conditional statements, for example, if we wanted to further inquiry on a certain type of message, such as when I click the condition, say if that condition is equal to, we'll say email equals or contains, actually, let's redo that. So string contains Yahoo or Gmail or some personal non-company email, we could have that conditional run where we would follow up with a special campaign or send it to a different location. And I would just be able to insert my email server here and be able to run that separate campaign to further qualify this lead before it was moved to our typical campaign in Marketo. With that, that shows everything we wanted to cover on the side of TIBCO Cloud Integration. So I'll now switch it back over to the presentation. Before we move to questions, I wanted to point out a few resources for you to get a chance to try out TIBCO Cloud Integration on your own. The first thing I'd like to point out is that TIBCO software has its own YouTube playlist. So by going to the TIBCO Cloud Integration playlist on our YouTube page, you'll be able to see many different things, such as how to build these applications on your own and make those connections just like I did in the demo today. Also, if there's a little more information you need as you're working through this on your own, you could check out our GitHub page, which has many really cool applications that we have been able to connect to, and other samples. We also have our community page, so if you ever get stuck or need any help, feel free to go onto the community page where there's other solutions consultants, like myself, that will be able to answer any questions that you post. Lastly, we have our ideas portal. So if there's something you see that you would like to have improved or any new features you would like to recommend, this would be the portal to do it. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening in on our TIBCO Cloud Integration webinar. And to get started yourself, we offer a 30-day trial at cloud.tibco.com. And we encourage you to try out the trial today and succeed in your cloud integration needs. Thanks for listening. If you haven't entered any questions already, feel free to enter these questions in the Q&A portion, and I'll get to you as soon as possible. So I have a couple questions in the Q&A panel so far, and feel free to add more as if any come up. The first question is, can you tell us a little bit more about sandboxes? Yeah, absolutely. So sandboxes we mentioned earlier when I was naming the application and choosing where to store it. So essentially what a sandbox is a organized group or folder to keep your application. So such as a testing sandbox or a production sandbox. It essentially allows you to organize these applications into different groups. And within the sandboxes you can also configure how those are accessed to others, whether it's private or public or only an internal use case, which only applies to live apps being able to access those applications or any other application on the cloud. I have another question here. It says, you mentioned that the apps were BW applications. How are those created, or how can I import existing projects? So earlier when we were creating the type of application, there were 4 different ones to choose from. One of them was being able to import a application from Business Studio, which is essentially the desktop tool that comes with TIBCO Cloud Integration. And so this essentially allows you to not only take old BEW apps, which are BusinessWorks applications that are our old on-premise applications, you can now bring those into the Business Studio and upload those into the cloud. Of course, the one hiccup there is applications that you bring in the cloud cannot be stateful. So if they are stateful, they're going to need some refactoring to be done before you can actually bring those into the cloud and import those over in the Business Studio. The third question I have here is, does an API need to be predefined as a trigger for the flow, or can it be a part of the actual flow? Great question. So absolutely. So in those general activities, when we were creating the integration flow, we have the ability to make a REST call and return a response to it. And so not only can you have that as the actual trigger, but you can also have that within the application, which enables you to actually call multiple APIs within that same individual flow, which is very useful when you're combining different data from multiple API sources and wanting to be able to return that as part of an API.